Good morning, everybody. If we want to take our seats, we'll get started here in about a minute. All right, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to the Higher Education Committee, the Dual Enrollment and Tuition Equalization Grant Ad Hoc Committee. This is our second committee hearing. Thank you, everybody, for being here today on the committee and all of our guests and people who are viewing us through the live stream. Also want to thank the University of Georgia for hosting us today. I know Blake Rollison was here somewhere. I think he stepped out. We appreciate them, appreciate all the accommodations they've made for us today. But before we get started, I'd like to ask Representative Washburn if you'll open us up in a moment of prayer.
Our Father in heaven, we are deeply and sincerely grateful for all you do for us. You have blessed us beyond which we would have imagined or expected, and we're grateful for that. We are particularly grateful to have the opportunity to serve in the General Assembly of the state of Georgia, and we ask that you would give us wisdom, help us to think clearly and make the right decision at the right time. And as a follower of Christ, I offer this prayer in his name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, I think we'll kick off the committee hearing just by going around the table and letting everybody introduce themselves and tell us where everybody's from. And we'll start with Chairman Widar.
Marcus Widar, live right down the road in Watkinsville, Georgia, represent most of Oconee County and a portion of Florida.
I'm Dale Washburn, District 144, which is North Bibb County, a big part of Monroe and Jones counties.
Hey, Chairman Fleming, my name is Chuck Martin. I represent the 49th District in North Fulton County, portions of the city of Roswell, Alpharetta, and Milton.
I'm Carter Barrett. I represent House District 24 on the north side of Atlanta, all encompassed within Forsyth County, city of Cumming, that area.
Good morning. I am State Representative Rhonda Bernot, District 77 in Clayton County.
Good morning, Chairman. Lydia Glaze, House District 67 in South Fulton and Coweta counties. Thank you.
Representative Jasmine Clark, House District 108 in Gwinnett County.
Great. Thank you all for being here. And also would like to point out, thank Christy from Legislative Council for being here this morning. And also in the back of the room, Franklin from the House Media Services for helping us with the live streaming and the mics and all that today. So we appreciate all the staff that has worked hard to make these two committee meetings come together. So first of all, I want to point out, y'all got a packet of stuff in front of y'all just so y'all kind of know what it is. Y'all can take home and look there. Some of it is responses that some of the agencies followed up with us after the last committee hearing with questions that members had. So that's in there. You also got some other stuff from student finance as well. And last week, there was an email went out with other responses to some questions that the committee members had at our previous committee hearing a few weeks ago. So just to kind of recap where we are, we had our kickoff meeting at the Capitol a few weeks ago, and we heard from the dual enrollment and TEG stakeholders, helped us gain a deeper understanding on what we're looking at moving forward as a committee. And just kind of the plan for today is to just have an open discussion on dual enrollment. We want our focus today to be on dual enrollment, I know that's where we spent a lot of our time with the first committee meeting. It was on that, and there was a lot of questions, and I'm sure we'll have more questions come from this meeting today that will get addressed as well. We do have representatives in the audience today from DOE, TCSG, and Student Finance, that if any questions arise during the hearing, we can ask them to come up. USG, unfortunately, was unable to be with us today due to a scheduling conflict and some things they had going on, but they're happy to respond to anything questions that come from this meeting, and I know they'll be joining us in the next 2 committee meetings as well. Just for a little housekeeping, everybody knows we have a next committee hearing, which will be on October 4th, and that will be in Atlanta. We're looking to kick that off at 9 o'clock that morning, and we'll be sending out more information on that meeting as we get closer, and that meeting will be solely to focus on tuition equalization grants and hearing from stakeholders and having time for those people and interested parties to address this committee at that time. And then our follow-up meeting after that will be October 26th. That will be in Statesboro. We're still working through that. It will be on the campus of Georgia Southern University. We're hopeful to at least, at minimum, have a live stream. Maybe, I don't know if we'll be able to work out Zoom or not. Probably not. So just want to put down your radar. We'll keep the committee posted with emails as we move forward. So I just wanted to kick it off, and we can just start real quick. If anybody has any opening comments before we dive in. I know Commissioner Dozier is here. He was unable to be with us at the last meeting. So I wanted to, after we have opening comments, if there are any, I wanted to give him some time to address the committee, and I'm sure there'll be questions that come up from that. And I'll just kick it off. I think our first committee meeting was very productive. These committees have been set up to look into these issues that we're addressing, and I got some response from some of our colleagues after the meeting that reached out kind of wanting to know the purpose of the committee, and a few of them asked, is the purpose of this committee to look at cutting dual enrollment, looking at doing away with dual enrollment altogether. And my response to them was, no, it's the exact opposite. Our job is to come up with suggestions to improve these programs, to help sustain these programs for many years to come. And that's what we have to do as a legislative body every few years to make sure that these programs stay intact for Georgians. So with that being said, I'll just open the floor up to anybody that has any open remarks, and we'll then go to Commissioner Dozier. Good. Yes, sir.
Thank you for doing that. I got similar feedback. You're looking to cut the dual enrollment, and thank you for clarifying that. But perhaps it was my remarks that maybe caused that when I talked about the cost of the dual enrollment being 3 times. The reason I emphasize that was because it does cost a lot. We want to make sure that value is driven to the student, not it costs a lot. We need to reduce the number of people using it. So sometimes the words you say are heard a different way than you mean them. But clearly, because it does cost a lot, and there's a value in the state treasury that spends it, a value in the human capital that teaches it. I just wanted to acknowledge the value that goes into it, that we want to make sure that, at least from my standpoint, that we get that value to the student. It's not for the technical college or the university system component that delivers it. It's not to relieve the K-12 institution from having to teach that student. It's to provide value for that student. So thank you for emphasizing the fact that this group is to look at making dual enrollment more valuable to students, not to cut funding there too.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, I referenced to several of the colleagues I talked to, and I wasn't in the body at the time, but House Bill 444 back in 2019. That was the last time we really took a deep dive into dual enrollment. The state had to look at it, put some parameters around it, and I think strengthened the program with some of the changes that were made. So this is a normal process that we do every few years, and once I talk to our colleagues, and they understand that. So, anybody else?
Go
ahead, Representative.
I wanted to thank you for it. At first, I wasn't really too sure about the committee, but I will say that it has forced me to go back and really look at dual enrollment, because I think when it came out, everybody was excited. It sounded really good, but when you really go and spend time talking with your school districts and people and find out, and also on the college end, you really find out what's really going on. And for me, I found out that, I thought a lot of students were going, but then I found out not as many as I thought were attending were. And so it gave me an opportunity to kind of come back and say, okay, what are the barriers and why are they not going, and what can we do or can we not do on both the high school level and on the college level to make sure that both of them are successful.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to sit in. I'm not a member of your committee, but I'm very interested in this topic. And I commend you for the work you're doing. And I guess I understand some of those questions, but I think it is always important for us to assess the taxpayer dollars that are being spent and being sure they're being spent effectively, and that the system is operating on what the original intent was, which follows up with what the representative was just saying. So I think it's very prudent to be at least reassessing the program, and I appreciate the chance to sit in. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, we'll go on and ask Commissioner Dozier to come on up, and glad that he could be with us today. And I think he's got some information on enrollment with their dual enrollment program through the system, and we'll be here for questions as well. So, Commissioner Dozier, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to present, and I apologize for not being here at the last meeting when others presented. Hopefully we did a good job giving you guys an overview of TCSG, and I believe at the same meeting Student Finance provided kind of an overview of some of the stats. I may repeat some of that, so I apologize if I do, but I think it's some important stats as we look at it. Going back to, Mr. Chairman, what you mentioned about House Bill 444 and looking at coming this morning, I went back and kind of looked at some of House Bill 444, and just a reminder to myself, as we continue to do, as you said, I think House Bill 444 was to strengthen dual enrollment. I believe it was also to make sure that our workforce pipeline was strengthened for the future, and I believe we've had some pretty positive results of House Bill 444. So as you guys continue to look at strengthening dual enrollment, I am the biggest advocate for that, because I believe, as I have gone around and met with my counterparts across the nation, that one of the things that makes Georgia stand out on the future pipeline is exactly the dual enrollment program connected to our college and career academies and the power of CTAE as we look at skills moving forward. And we hear that from new industries when they come in. SK On has been a great proponent, and Stephen Jang, every time he presents, talks about that pathway that we are so fortunate to have in Georgia that starts at our K-12 system, goes through our TCSG system, and connects to our USG system. And I think that is something that is fairly unique for Georgia when you look at others. When you just look at some of the purposes as defined in House Bill 444, there was 4 main things that came out, and you saw that in Student Finance's Commission report on dual enrollment based on November 22nd that President Lynn Riley presented, I think, to this body. But in there, it reminded us that one of the purpose of House Bill 444 was to increase access. I do believe that as you look at dual enrollment and how it has had that positive impact, when you look at TCSG specifically, depending on the year, it fluctuates between 48 and 51% of our students are first generation post-secondary students, meaning that their parents and no one before them had furthered their education beyond high school. And one of the results when you look at is dual enrollment is having that impact of giving access to those that didn't further their education in the past. The second purpose was to increase high school graduation. We know that we have done great in this state, and I can't connect the dots specifically to dual enrollment, but we know that dual enrollment has had a positive impact on graduation. The last two really hits home, and it's to make sure we're preparing a skilled workforce, and I'll talk a little bit about that data. And the fourth one is to decrease time and cost for our students to get their higher education and move on to the workforce. So those really come together and connect very closely. When you look at the articulation going back to the true pathways that are identified through dual enrollment, that connectivity is even strengthened through the articulation agreements through our system, which is fairly unique. Several years ago, TCSG and USG had a statewide articulation agreement of 26, I always mess up, 26 or 28 courses. Every time I go to say it, I think I know it, and then I butcher it, but I believe it's 28 courses. Those are mainly your core courses, so if someone takes one of those classes at a TCSG institution, Math 1101, English 1101, those core classes, they're accepted in the university system. The reason that is so magical is we're both on semester systems, we're both SACS approved. So both of your systems, higher education systems, are overseen by the same governing bodies to make sure that what we are teaching matches across these systems. What we didn't have until the pandemic is we had not given articulation to our CTAE programs in our K-12 system. And I'm very proud to let you know that during the pandemic, we sat down with the superintendent and the Department of Education, and we navigated where we now have 18 articulation agreements where if a student takes a course through CTAE at the K-12 system, they get college credit in our system, most of that being welding and other things. And that's what plays into that skills workforce. One of the other things when you look at the purpose that I didn't mention that I always attributed to dual enrollment was we all know that we had a high dropout rate or success rate of first-year college students. The hardest time to really keep a student was that first year. We want to see them coming back that second year. What I'm proud to say is when you look at the students coming through TCSG doing dual enrollment, approximately 15% of them are staying at TCSG and continuing their education. To give you an idea of what that looks like in a global aspect, TCSG receives about 7% of our high school graduates. We have a goal actually to get to 15%, but in that dual enrollment population, we are at that 15%. Folks who come in and get higher education through dual enrollment stay with us at that 15% level. This is the key that really connects us and why that pathway is so important. Over 40% of our students move on to the University System of Georgia. So they're coming in and doing exactly what I said the purpose of House Bill 444 was, is to have that success factor in them continuing their education and getting that skill. As you look at the numbers, just on a TCSG, based on that 2022 report, we had 49,000 dual enrollment students across the system. TCSG was blessed to have 26,000 of the 49 for 52%. USG had a little over, just under 16,000 at 31%, and our private colleges had right at 8,900 or 17% of those students. So it's a great distribution across all of our pathways. And I should have said, I see Jen back here, we have great articulation with our private colleges too and a great partnership. So thank y'all for that partnership. When you looked at House Bill 444, one of the things was a concern on when do you take dual enrollment. And if that wasn't presented, that has had a positive as well. When you looked at the grade distribution of it in 2022, 56% of those taking dual enrollment classes were seniors. 40% were juniors, and 4% was sophomores. And we had very few freshmen taking dual enrollment. We know that was a change from prior to House Bill 444. When you looked at the 30-hour cap that House Bill 444 put in, and you look at the distribution of when those hours are being taken, our seniors are taking approximately 11 hours, our juniors are taking 10 hours, and our sophomores are taking approximately 8 hours. So as we look at truly dual enrollment, giving a pathway to early access, but also preparation and graduation rates, that makes a lot of sense. So I do think is the work that you guys did on House Bill 44 strengthened dual enrollment. Now let's look at the numbers as far as for TCSG. I mentioned that in 2022 we were at 26,000. I mentioned that the total number was at 49,000. We really weren't sure how much House Bill 44 might have slowed up dual enrollment or how much the pandemic slowed up dual enrollment. We know there's probably some connections to both, when you looked at making sure the right student was in dual enrollment, but also just with our K-12 systems and our post-secondary education systems, navigating dual enrollment, there was a slowdown. But when you talk about barriers to dual enrollment, I'm proud to say that this year we are at 34,000 dual enrollment students, but we're still under the auspice of House Bill 444, making sure that our seniors, our juniors, and those that are preparing for higher education are being met. So I believe we truly are, when you look at the workforce pipeline and what dual enrollment is providing, is hitting what the premise that I mentioned earlier is, preparing the skilled workforce, and it's decreasing time and cost for those students to get that skill. When you look at specifically our students, I'm proud to say also that yes, a lot of them take that core class. That's what dual enrollment's designed for, but it's also designed to make sure they have a skill. And 42% of all of our students are taking a technical course, meaning they are getting a skill while they're working on those core classes. And when you look at the credit hours, 47% of the credit hours taken in TCSG by a dual enrollment student are technical credit hours. So not only, I'm very proud of our 22 colleges, you know, we had to grow into what are the right skill while they're going through dual enrollment. So whatever pathway they choose, if they continue their education, great, for a 4-year degree. If they stop with a 2-year degree with a skill, what's a high-paying, high-demand job? And just to give you a feel for this, in last year's look, the highest level in TCSG, the highest program in TCSG in dual enrollment was basic shield metal arc welding. The second one was welding and joining, and the third one was automotive electrical and electronic systems. And so as you look at, yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to get that to you. I don't have it right in front of me, but be happy to get that for you, Mr. Chairman. But what we have really done is, with the implementation of House Bill 444, we have looked to make sure that the technical courses they're taking matches up to well-paying and high-demand jobs. I'm not going to say we've done 100% great job with that. I'm sure there's something out there that you can find that doesn't match up with that. But House Bill 444, to your point, Mr. Chairman, we all looked at to make sure that the success of this program really met the merits and the purpose of the need. And your colleges across the state have really matched up our dual enrollment students to a high demand need. And that's what's being seen by those taking it. Mr. Chairman, I really do think this program sets us apart. I am proud of the part that TCSG does in it, but more importantly, it's really the connectivity of all of our systems. We continue to grow that. If we're honest, if we're not careful, we have a tendency to silo and protect TCSG, silo and protect USG, the privates, K-12. But this state has done a great job trying to make sure that when a student comes in, there's a pathway, an on and off ramp to whatever success they want to have, to whatever level of education they need, or to whatever skill they want. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any questions, but that's just a quick overview from my perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we appreciate your comments and all the hard work you and your staff do for the citizens of Georgia. So I'll open up if there's any questions from the committee for the Commissioner this time. Representative?
Really know that much. I mean, we hear about that, all these different people are going into welding. But if I had to market why welding was important, what would I tell a student or someone or a parent to get their child interested in it?
Yeah, I don't have the stats in front of me, but really most of these jobs are the high paying and the opportunity. When you look at all of our manufacturing jobs that come into this state, there is a host of need of welders. What's even more important in those jobs is they need to know how to weld, but most of that's done through robotic welding now. And so when you combine in the PLC or the programming side connected to welding, these are entry-level jobs that pay well into the 50s, and you have the opportunity to be over 100,000 in a very short period with those type of certificates, with the opportunities that this body has brought to this state.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Barrett?
Commissioner, I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last year, and thank you for being there. I know you came in at an awkward time, right? About a week and a half before COVID really
Yes.
took off. I look forward to getting to sort of hear 3 years in what your big overarching. How do you know when you've really won your great big old stretch goals for TCSG and what you're really going for over time? I also specifically look forward to hearing sort of what your thoughts are on how we get back to Chairman Martin's comments earlier today. How do we get more of our adult people back into the workforce? People who've become sedentary, bad choice of words, after COVID, who are
Right.
probably eager to get back to work, who are facing a tough inflationary environment, probably anticipating. I'm a good example. I thought, well, I'm pretty much retired now a couple of years ago, and then inflation hit like a freight train, and I thought,
Right.
well, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then I thought, how many people out there are like me and at this age that now realize I could live to be 95 years old?
Yep.
I'm going to have to be relevant a lot longer. And what we can do at TCSG to pull folks back into the workforce and entice them. And it's not just about the Benjamins, not just about the money, but rather quality of life and doing things that you find interesting.
Right. I'll touch on it. We can talk a little bit more just in passing as far as the true stretch goals that we have at TCSG. But one of the things with the pandemic hitting us, like everybody, we had to reassess kind of what are the next year, 2 years, how do we make sure, and I hate to keep coming back to workforce, but as the state continues to be the #1 state to do business and us being the true workforce pipeline of the future, how do we make sure we get the numbers? But we can provide, and I believe TCSG has done an incredible job making sure the quality of education and quality of training matches to where we warranty our graduates. No other institution warranties that if you come out and you go get a job and you don't have the skill, you can come back to us free of charge, and we will make sure you have the skill. So the quality we have down pat. The numbers scared me a few years ago, and so we have spent a lot of time on how do we make sure that we keep quality, but we also focus on enrollment and growth and get down barriers, as was mentioned over here. And I couldn't be more proud the last few years. We went through, and this may sound simple, but we hadn't done it in a while. We went through a true enrollment growth plan by all 22 colleges, 88 campuses, and what do they look like? And all of those are unique. The one thing I will say, TCSG has been very nimble at the local level to make sure we meet the needs of the communities that we serve. And each of these enrollment plans were unique. I'll give you an example. Albany Tech, they looked at a zip code. Where is the zip code of those that needs economic prosperity the highest and we have the least impact, and how do we zero in to make sure those populations are touched? That's just one example of these are big enrollment growth plans, but that was one little piece of Albany Tech's enrollment growth plan. What you don't know is how are they going to work. And we're a little bit skeptical. You always hear you can't grow without money. And I'm not knocking, that's just one of those statements. We don't believe that. We believe we can grow because of purpose. And that's what our 22 colleges showed is the last couple of years. I shared with the committee before this, many of y'all were on it, but we're up, I'm not going to rattle off all the numbers, we're up around 9% this year. We've had 4 straight semesters of seeing enrollment grow. It wasn't just in dual enrollment. We've had a lot of dual enrollment growth in that, but we're up 4% in traditional students this semester over last fall. And what has come out of that is making sure that we focus on the quality, but the quantity as well. And we've got to have that in this state. To your point on labor participation, one thing to remind us, we look at labor in 2 different ways. What's the number of workers? Georgia now has more workers than we had before the pandemic. So remember that. We have more people working today than we did before the pandemic. But our labor participation rate, which is what you're referring to, is still low. And so how do we get folks who have taken themselves out of the workforce and get them back engaged? Some of that is TCSG used to do that in the past very good. Our average age of a student less than 7 or 8 years ago was 36 years of age. We have been working hard to be a first choice institution, and we'll continue to work on that. What I mean by that is back to the, the question over here, you can come through the technical college system and make a great wage and a great living wage. We want to be a first choice institution. We also want to make sure that we provide that access through dual enrollment and other avenues. And so what happened was, as you look, and the more we've become a first choice institution, the more we've opened up and been a first choice for dual enrollment, our average age has dropped quickly. It's dropped down to about 26 now, 25 from that 36. What it also means is we don't have that lost decade. What was happening was we were having people graduate from high school, not find their way until they were much older. We were having people get a job that didn't match their needs and finding us later. We got to make sure we don't forget that part of it. Back to your question. We have spent so much time right now being a first choice or early choice, don't have a lost decade, but how down do we take those that took themselves out of the workforce and bring them back in? So that's part of that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. You mentioned two things. First, you mentioned the number of students. There were 49,000 total doing dual enrollment and 26,000 in TCSG. I missed the number for USG.
It was 15,914.
All right. And so my question is not that. I just wanted to get that number written down. My question is, when we think about what's high demand today,
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily what's going to be high demand 3 years from now. And I think we have to also acknowledge that as quickly as technology is changing, you mentioned it even when you were talking, some of the things that are, quote, high demand now,
Yep.
robots are starting to do those things. And so I'm curious as to how many, because I know we don't have freshmen in there anymore, but how many sophomores are taking those core classes that could really be transported to wherever they go or
Mhm.
whatever they decide to do versus taking those technical courses, which are very good, but if I'm a sophomore, I'm not graduating for 3 years.
Right.
I might be going down a path that leads to a field that's not as in demand as it was when I was a sophomore.
Yeah. Great question. I don't have that number in front of me. Happy to try to get that to you. Just to let you know, all of our programs to make sure that, and you're very right that it's changing so fast. I heard your point. So as I make a statement about our programs and keeping up with times, I get that gap. But I do want you guys to know, if you don't know, every program in TCSG at each college has an industry advisory board. And so whether it's welding or mechatronics or precision manufacturing, the local industries and the new industries coming in have representatives that make sure that the program that's being taught at the time matches the need, and I'm sure it has some projection of future need as well. And so that's one way how we make sure that today's program is not tomorrow's program. Now, your point's well taken. If a sophomore's taking it and there's a 2 years gap, I heard you loud and clear on that. But I did want the committee to know that that's one of the special things that we do to make sure that our programs are always up to date based on current need and hopefully future need. The other thing that I'm really proud is as we delve into whatever may be the latest and greatest in automation, whether it's AI or whether it's just true automation, we have the partnership I mentioned earlier with USG is we have some great partnerships with the University System of Georgia, with Georgia Tech, and we're doing a lot of autonomous manufacturing of the future, where we're connecting clean manufacturing when it comes to chip manufacturing across this state when you look at manufacturing. And the neat thing is when you look at these partnerships, and I'll use both of those, we are sitting together as USG and TCSG, and how does that look from a higher ed specialty area from a USG perspective, and how does that look from a technical aspect from TCSG, so that our programs actually mirror together. And so we're over at Georgia Tech doing clean manufacturing, and they have a facility right over there where we're doing the underneath with the AC units, how it's pulling the air in and out, keeping it clean, the technical side, the smart HV side, while they're doing a lot of the biotech and bioscience part of that as far as the robotics and things. And so while we do have a gap with that sophomore, I do want you guys to know that your technical college and your university systems are keeping up on a daily basis with that future opportunities.
Thank you. Commissioner, I want to ask you, and you might have stated this, might have missed it. You said currently there's 34,000 students in the
Yes, sir.
enrollment program with TCSG. Do you know, just random numbers, for the past 2 years, what those numbers were? And if not, you can get them to us.
Yeah, if I can flip to it real quick, I can give it to you. I've got it right here. So 2022, and these numbers don't match up exactly, Ms. Clark. I pulled that other number out of the end report that Student Finance did. Our end of time number may not line up exactly, but for 2022 we had 28,953. 2021 we had 27,531, and 2020 we had 35,646. And so you can see that impact in 2020 when both House Bill 444 went into effect, but also the pandemic hit, and that's where I'm saying we really can't segment the impact of going from 35 down to 27, really where that lies. But we can see that under House Bill 444, we have strengthened it, and we are up to 34,000 now, which really goes to the question, I keep bringing it up, but the barriers and making sure we're getting folks engaged in that opportunity.
Right. Thank you, sir. I think Chairman Martin, did you have something?
Yeah, Commissioner, I guess, going back to Dr. Clark's question relative to somebody taking the welding class, you
Yep.
know, am I right in saying that some of these CTAE courses that you can take through dual enrollment actually can produce a certificate?
They do.
And so my question is, could you, through dual enrollment, take enough classes to get that certificate in welding?
Absolutely.
And so then the follow-up there, you know, when it really works is if that is a person that's interested in that in high school that goes and gets that certificate, and then they get, you know, an internship, an apprenticeship, you know, in between their, you know, in their summer or
That's
after
right.
school and so forth. So it's not necessarily that.
You're right.
Some may do it at the 10th grade and then not do it again. I mean, it could be just something they wanted to try and it doesn't work, right?
That's right.
But the idea there is that they could, you know, have that and work, and then at times do the rest of post-secondary education while they're working. I mean,
Yep.
that is a way that dual enrollment is meant to help
Thank you for
students
connecting
that
that.
don't want to, you know, they don't want to go from high school into you know, a classroom for their next thing. They still want to get some more education. Tell us a little. I mean, do you have any kind of anecdotal information on
Yeah.
what percentage of people actually get a stackable certificate through dual enrollment, in addition to those courses would count if they go to a different area?
Mr. Chairman, we have the number of awards, and it's pretty high for those in dual enrollment. I've got a number in front of me, but I'm just not sure if it's connected. Mark, do you know 12,449 on my slide? Is that true dual enrollment, or is that a combo of others? So based on what I'm looking at, I'd need to confirm that what I'm looking at is accurate. 12,459 people received in 22 a certificate of some sort, which does give you the skill to get that job, as you mentioned, and be productive. The other thing you mentioned that I had not mentioned was apprenticeships, and I do want to thank this body here and the governor. Just so you know, we operate employment services under TCSG's umbrella, as well as the Governor's Office of Workforce Development. Underneath that is our apprenticeship program. That apprenticeship program in prior years had primarily been funded just by the federal dollars that came down through, I believe it's the Title I money. Title I money. And last year or 2 years ago, this body put in a little bit over $1.275 million for us to kick off a program to actually enhance the employers who are hiring apprenticeships to get that going. And then part of the federal dollars that came down during the pandemic, the governor allocated a little over $4 million towards apprenticeships for training of those that are going through it. And so when you look at it, The program we already had, along with these two new programs, has really pushed Georgia into the forefront of apprenticeships. It really connects to dual enrollment as well. So thank you for bringing that up also, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that.
Uh,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just, I mean, I know we talk a lot about, those things with technology, but what about those basic jobs, like the electrician that I'm looking for now to fix my fan and plumbing? Do we still offer those jobs too, under the dual enrollment program?
We do.
Okay, and so they could get a certificate in those, or
Yep,
how
so-
does that work?
So it, just so I'm clear, we do offer those.
Mhm.
We do not have a book of dual enrollment programs that are offered at every college partnership with each of the local K-12 systems. So each of those areas look at what the demand is and what the students are looking for, and we marry them up. So we have CNA, we have electrical, we have HVAC, we have welding. I'm trying to think of a few other big ones. Automotive, we mentioned that, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And so we have, depending on the area you're in, depends on the class that's offered. I just didn't want you to think it was a generic list of offerings that's offered everywhere.
Oh, no, I understand
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
I just want to make sure that
But yes,
those,
ma'am.
that they are still being offered.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Thank you, Commissioner. We
Thank you.
appreciate you being here this morning with us, and I'm sure we'll have some follow-ups that we'll send over your way too.
Thank you, sir.
So with that, I'd like to just open it up to the committee for any other questions, comments, thoughts. I can have a discussion about the program. Representative?
Yes. I went and talked to the counselor, the head counselor for our school district, and kind of looking, one of the questions I had asked the last time was the comparison with AP and dual enrollment. And so I know that I made this statement that you can take the AP courses, but unless you get a certain score, it doesn't count as a class, as a college credit. So one of the things that was asked was that if it is possible that we establish, like College Board, the AccuPlacer exam for dual enrollment. I know that has come up as one of the reasons why some of the dual enrollment has gone down, is that the students, they have an option to opt out of taking the exam, and if they opt out, then that means that they can't qualify for dual enrollment. And so that was kind of confusing to me, but that's one of the things that she asked. And the other thing, of course, is always the problem is reinstating the transportation grant fund, because we know that with our dual enrollment students, a lot of them cannot get to those colleges, that they have selected, or if it's one that's local in their area.
Appreciating that, we're writing that down. We'll get for our next meeting, our fourth meeting, have some answers to that, and we'll probably go ahead and we'll get them emailed around to the committee. So those
Okay.
are some good thoughts. I appreciate that.
All right.
We'll get both of those. We might follow up with you after the meeting too on some of that.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative Barrett, you good? Chairman Martin? No, you're good.
I know we have somebody from the Department of Education, and I want to take nothing away from the human being counselor that is in the schools, and what we heard last time, that there might be a need for more of them. But I do want to ask this question. Would it be possible to make this information available to the student and parent? I mean, I know everybody's afraid of AI now, right? I mean, I don't want to do that. But there's a decision tree on this. I mean, years ago, before it was called AI, there was if you're interested in this, you go down this trail. If you're interested in that, you may go over there. So I wonder, and I'd ask the Department of Education, again, taking nothing away from the value that the human connection does to a student. I want to be very clear, because I'm learning my last meeting, the words didn't exactly get the way that I meant. So I just wonder if there is a way we could make that available. I know that we have the Georgia Futures book here. I know that the chancellor has done with Georgia Degrees Pay. You know, those two websites exist out there, and there's marketing to get them out, but I venture a guess there's still a lot of parents and students that don't know that they're out there. So my question is if we could maybe take a look later from the Department of Education at how we could expand that information access further and into the home, because I think, I can't remember, if it was the representative or Dr. Clark that said, you know, not enough parents know what's available out there. So just something that I would throw out for the committee's consideration perhaps is if there's a way to augment that individual support with a decision tree type thing. I want to be this, I go there. And then the question may be back for the university system and TCSG. I know we have the transfer ability, that's not the right word for it, it's articulation agreements between us. You know, I wonder if there could be more. I wonder if there could be more. If we're spending money for the students doing it, you know, it's probably not foreign to anybody in this room that a 15-year-old will change their mind. And if they go down this road, you hate to say they've done that, and then they can't take it, you know, take it over here. So those two things. Just can we make that available to help them make good decisions, and then when they happen to make a decision and change their mind, can we help them be able to use that education?
Well, you hit your button.
Was talking to my friend here, and I was telling her I had someone call me, and they told me, they said, my son's not going to get hope. And I was like, okay. But they received that general letter, but their child didn't take any rigor courses. And because they didn't qualify. And so then that parent decided to be an activist and tried to make sure that they went on and started talking to other parents about make sure you're paying attention when your child does come into 9th grade, that these are the things that you're going to have to do if this is what you want to do. And I do think that that is really important. And this was a parent that felt like they were really active in their child's life, but they missed that whole part.
Well, we have Mr. Matt Cardoza from DOE with us, so I'll have him come up for a few minutes and address that and maybe more questions.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Chair Martin. Great question. Yes, the human element is obviously very difficult to take away from that, but y'all been generous enough to fund for many years, and we have one thing in particular, youth science. Y'all probably familiar with that. One that my kids personally have done that, and it's a great resource that essentially does what you're saying. Like, what are your skills? What are you good at? Kind of trying to direct you in that pathway. And you know, just like a lot of institutions, it so many times comes down even to the high school level. You know, the counselors, how much they're in front of the students directly doing the career counseling part, being able to suggest the pathways to them. So I think the tools are there. Again, I think unfortunately it is a bit of a human element to make sure that students are aware of all the dual enrollment options. We do a lot of marketing. We do a lot of marketing with TCSG, with Georgia Student Finance, USG, but to your point, it's not ever going to be in front of 100% of students.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, I think, I don't know, it's something for us to consider and something to certainly think, does it work to get the data underneath it? But I mean, it could almost be a project for a group at Georgia Tech or you know, a place where there was a computer science department that was working in the area to build a bit of a decision. Because it's really not artificial intelligence, it's a decision tree. It's just to lead them to, you know, think about it, because regardless, we're never going to have a counselor that can ignite every student, right? So if it's something that starts the conversation, that gets them to the in-person counseling. So we'll work with you guys to see about it. Again, I don't want to say that it has to be this to get somebody going, but it's another tool to get the interest. And, you know, for that matter, it wouldn't be limited to high school students. There could be somebody out there that's going looking to go back into a career, and goes down this decision tree and go, I'm interested in this, that, and the, you know, and it points them in a direction.
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you, sir. Representative Glaze, did you have a question?
Yes. So I wanted to just really listen. This is my area that I spent almost 20 years in. And what I do know is that students don't have all the tools, even if they have the information, to make the decisions about the pathways. They do have some opportunities to, when they mirror certain careers and they get in and they see it in their home or in their families, they have a better idea and experience with it. But one of the things that I found successful is making sure that parents were the ones who were in the room. So every year at the beginning of the year, I had 9th grade parents. I met with my 8th grade parents at the end of their 8th grade year and started talking to them. I brought grandparents in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade so that parents and grandparents had a real good idea about all the access points and opportunities, and then the plethora of pathways to get there. And I think when you have the community around the student better informed, you're going to have a student with better opportunities and a more precise direction for where they want to go. And so I think our best friends in this whole idea of access and building a workforce are the parents and the grandparents. And I just want to say that because grandparents were really some of my strongest advocates to help my students get to the pathways that they really had the interest as well as the skill sets for it. And we could make and help make ambassadors in this area if we train them. We've got workforce who are retired educators who are in this area that we can put ambassadors in regions of the state to help us create more of a buzz with our students and grandparents. We've got AARP. They are always looking for projects to focus in on to help with the generations below us. So some intergenerational opportunities do exist, and I think we can utilize them. And it doesn't take a lot of money because you can train 50 of us, right, seniors, and give us the tools. And we'll go back to our churches, our community groups, and we'll begin to teach them, not just in our own families, but we'll begin to teach in the groups that we're part of as seniors. So we've got a whole, I think, force that I find very successful. When you pull the grandparents in, they've got like a gold thumb on this. I don't know if we just have the pocketbook and the checkbook, but they do have a sense of knowing and helping their grandchildren.
No, those are absolutely great points, Representative Glaze. Appreciate that. Any other members? Representative?
You know, my wife and I were blessed to have 4 children, and they've all grown up to be productive citizens, and we're thankful for that. And the advice I always gave them as they were growing up relative to their work was choose something honest and honorable and something you like doing. And I'm impressed with what we were hearing today about the technical colleges and the dual enrollment thing, because the process is, you know, they may find something they really like doing and go forward with that and be productive with it, but it's a process of maybe discovering what you don't like doing. And so even if they don't pursue that, I think it's very productive what we're doing there. So all of these things, all of the suggestions here, we're working together to try to get our young people prepared to live a quality and a productive life, and choosing something that you like doing is an important part of that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else from any of the members? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I might be showing my ignorance on how the program works. But one of the things that I hear a lot from people is the lack of transferability of credits between TCSG and USG. And so if students are using TCSG schools during dual enrollment, but then they become a senior and they decide, hey, I want to become a doctor now, and so they want to go. I would love to just get more information about how transferable those credits are to a USG institution, because I know it's not like it doesn't
Sure.
always match perfectly.
Sure. Obviously, we don't have anybody here from USG. That's a good point, and I think we hit on that a little bit in our last meeting. But I would ask Commissioner Dozier, maybe he has a little insight on
He's
this.
itching to come up.
Yeah, I know. I saw him moving back there. He knew what was coming.
I think Chairman Martin hit on it, and then so did you, so thank you. Mentioned earlier 28 classes from a state to state that's articulated. You're exactly right. When you get beyond those 28 courses that's been agreed on between the two systems, it depends on the articulation at the local college level. So what I mean by that is, I live in Georgia Piedmont's area. So it depends on what articulation agreements Georgia Piedmont then has with Georgia State or with Kennesaw State or with someone else. In many cases, we have great articulator, or one of the private colleges. Sorry, Jen. But as you look at it, what we would love from TCSG is there any state level 2+2 articulation agreements that the university system would be open to? And so what I mean by that is we have a lot of college to college 2+2, and what I mean by 2+2 is you graduate with an associate's degree in accounting from a TCSG college. That full 2 years goes over and you pick up where you left off at a university system. We have many of those at a college to college level. So I want you to know, right off the top of my head, we have a great partnership with engineering between Ogeechee Tech and Georgia Southern. And so those are just some of the examples. We actually have a great engineering statewide agreement with Kennesaw in all of our colleges. And so to answer your question, it really depends on where the student is and what those agreements are today. But that is something we're trying to grow on, and we're trying to expand, and we have new ones every day at the college to college level. One day I do hope that we can have some system to system level on those 2+2s.
To follow up on that it's a little bit like the AP courses, and I don't want to step on anybody here, but I mean, if you go take an AP, math course, and you get a 3, it's good at university system component. And the university here, I don't want to. This is not to pick on them. It's just to make an analogy or to set a point. So you make a 3, that'll go at that university, and it'll count as that class. If you make a 3 on it and it's a math class, it'll transfer to Georgia Tech as an elective,
Yep.
but it won't count as that class because their school in engineering or computer science or whatever
Right.
thinks their whatever that math class is, course number, it needs to be taken there to go there. So, there's a fine line I get between academic freedom and a dean protecting their degree. But I agree with Dr. Clark. I hear what you're saying. Everywhere we can, if you take this class at TCSG or at another college, and you take it over there and it's not a good enough prerequisite and you fail the next class, that's on you as a student. It's for us to tell you can't use it. I just know we're going to have to work with the university system on that, and with you guys and somebody, but much wiser than I in the world of academia, to find out how we protect the programs, the degrees, but how we give the maximum level of transfer, articulation to these students. And I don't know the answer to that, to let the deans at the various colleges So, I mean, how have you, so here's my question, after I'll ramble a bit. So how have you gotten to those 2+2 agreements? Because in places we do, it seems like we
Right.
put that straw man in place and see if we can do more of that.
Right. Well, I think, and I'll talk about ourselves internally. I would say that years ago, TCSG even had the same struggle internally to what you just mentioned. Is if you took this course at Chat Tech, was it equivalent of taking it at Georgia Piedmont? We as a system now have gotten beyond that, and if you take a course at any of our colleges, we realize that they are equals. Honestly, the way it has worked is the colleges work together, the deans of each of the colleges at the TCSG college and at the USG college, and they have determined that that pathway really is connected, and that's how those local 2+2s have been morphed across the system to where we have tons of them. They're just not from a system level. So the question would be is there some certain areas, I don't know what it is, I'll say accounting, but that's just me pulling something out of thin air. Is there an area where the TCSG curriculum in this area matches for the most part, maybe not at every college, but most of the university colleges truly does match up and would have that pure 2+2? And I believe that the two systems are open to that discussion. I think we're having that discussion. I think that we have gone so far in this area of articulation that we truly are just continuing to climb that hill. It's not a knock, it's something that we're just climbing as we move forward. And it's benefiting our students. And going backwards, that's why we have 18 articulations now with CTAE, with K-12 that we didn't have 2 years ago. And so we're doing it the full process.
I think that's, I mean, just as bringing it full circle.
Yeah.
I remember as a freshman legislator, Dr. Adams, president of the University of Georgia, came to the presentation to the Higher Ed Committee. Dr. Louise McVie was our chair.
Yep.
It was a little while ago. And,
I remember her then.
I'm a proud University of Georgia graduate. I'm proud of my degree over here. But I asked Dr. Adams, I said, does it really matter when you take freshman English? And Dr. Adams, as you would think, wearing the badge of university, oh, absolutely, we need you to take it on campus. We need it to be, taught on the North Campus here at the university. We now, some years later, know that it really doesn't matter where you take freshman English, because you can now get it through an AP course. You can now get it through dual enrollment. So I appreciate the steps we made, and just would like to be supportive of the academic world,
Yep.
but also pointed toward the student, that we continue to make those steps. For the students, because remember, this is about the students. It's not about protecting love my
Yep.
university. It's not about protecting the English department at the University of Georgia, or the math department at, a technical college. And if we just focus on the students, I think we'll be better served. So I hope we can do more of those. Dr. Clark brings up a great point.
Thank you.
Quarters or semesters? Everyone's on
Semesters.
semesters now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
That was a
So-
question, because I know sometimes when there's quarters versus semesters, that's why they say they don't transfer.
Right. So the one thing that we still have some of that holds up some of that articulation is not quarters anymore, which you're right, it used to be. I can't remember, it's probably been 10 years ago now that we went to semester. But we still have some courses that are not taught by master's level teachers. And so that's one of the things when we look at it, when we do articulation with our USG counterparts, we have to make sure that all of that matches up.
Gotcha.
And as we build that, we're willing to move to that area, but we do still have some of that as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussions or questions for the committee? Well, I think it's a very informative committee meeting we had today, some good dialogue. We've got some questions that we will work on from committee members and any members that were joining us virtually, watching the live stream. If you have any questions, please give them to us. We'll have them ready for you by the next committee meeting, and definitely have them emailed out. As we wrap up, I just want to thank all the staff. I failed to thank Molly earlier for all of her help, and we couldn't do this without her. And to remind everybody, our next meeting October 4th again in Atlanta. where we'll focus on tuition equalization grants. And at that meeting, I can't remember if I said this or not, you know, we'll have the interested parties and stakeholders come to us to address the committee. So be thinking between now and, you know, a few days before the committee meeting, if there's anything specific y'all would like for us to be prepared for as far as questions from anybody, any of the stakeholders that have already presented to us or possibly will be presenting to us. If you have anything, let us know. As I said in our last meeting, there was some information sent out prior to the last meeting that is very helpful when it comes to understanding the tuition equalization grants. And I think it was an audit we sent out and a few other things from the audit department. So if you haven't read that, please be prepared and have that read for our upcoming meeting. And if there's no other questions or comments, we'll stand adjourned. Representative?
I do have a last comment.
Sure.
Just for my colleagues and our peers. This is the time of year that we get our recommendations ready for those students who are going and attending our military academies. And so if there's anybody that needs help or want help, I actually did a lot of work in recruiting for them. So we are trying to make sure that our students from Georgia get opportunities in military academies. And right now, I think we've got till the end of the month for their nominations to get in for Congress and senators.
Absolutely, very important, and I know I've had several students in my district reach out, and we've reached out to the congressional delegation on that, so thank you for reminding us of that. Also like to thank Representative Clark and Washburn for being with us today, joining us. As always, y'all are welcome, so hope to see y'all in Statesboro next few weeks too. But with that being said, we'll stand adjourned, and we'll reconvene October 4th at the Capitol in Atlanta. Hope everybody has a great weekend, a great football weekend, and go Dogs.